Behold the tale of a country caught between epochs, an enigma sculpted by the chisel of today's world, India. This tale of a rising dragon is narrated eloquently by the unrelenting hum of media headlines across the globe. India, christened as the fastest accelerating economy in the world, has astoundingly outpaced all expectations, standing tall and unflinching in the face of the devastating coronavirus pandemic. Its growth engine, stoked with the fires of ambition and innovation, now purrs with the promise of double-digit growth this year alone. Yet beneath the glittering headlines and soaring economic digits, a disconcerting dissonance rings. While India's economic machine revs louder, an unsettling discontent is brewing within its populace. The quality of life, rather than improving with the boom, is perceived to have plummeted. The narrative of prosperity appears paradoxically twined with the increasing struggle of many Indians to make ends meet. Survey data paints a somber picture. A majority of Indians believe their lives have deteriorated, not improved, and hold a bleak outlook for the future. But why? Why does the cascade of prosperity not trickle down to quench the thirst of its people? What shadowed fault lines mar the surface of India's economic bloom? And most importantly, towards what unknown future do these undercurrents propel this sleeping giant? These are the questions that hang in the air, awaiting the unraveling of time to lay bare the answers. This is the dark side of the Indian miracle. To truly comprehend the intricate narrative that is unfolding, we must journey back through the mists of time to the tumultuous year of 1947. This was when India, breaking free from the fetters of British colonial rule, stepped onto the global stage as a sovereign nation. However, with its newfound freedom came a daunting inheritance, one of the world's most impoverished economies. With its infrastructure a hollow specter, industrial production a mere flicker in the dark, and a largely illiterate population, the land stood at a crossroads, teetering on the brink of destiny. In this decisive hour, India's first prime minister chose to carve a path less treaded. Rather than embracing economic liberalism and the free market, the favored choice of most nascently independent nations, he turned his gaze eastward, fueled by the fiery principles of socialism. Drawing inspiration from the might of the Soviet Union, he crafted an audacious economic blueprint for India, straddling the fine line between Soviet central planning and the sanctity of the private sector. In practice, this resulted in a seismic shift in the economic landscape. The Indian state seized the reins of key sectors including steel, mining, machine tools, water, telecommunications, insurance, energy, and banking, transforming them into state-owned enterprises. The private sector, though not completely obliterated, found itself ensnared within a web of stringent regulations, necessitating the approval of nearly 80 different government agencies to even produce a product. The Indian economy, under the watchful eye of the state, marched to the rhythm of 5-year plans, much like the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. These meticulously crafted plans governed the minutiae of economic activity, from identifying sectors requiring growth to specifying the production targets of individual companies. The underlying belief was that this strategy would prove to be the alchemical solution, capable of transmuting India's poverty-stricken past into an independent, prosperous future, allowing it to emerge phoenix-like from the ashes of its colonial history. Yet, in the cruel light of reality, this ambitious model turned out to be just as dysfunctional as its Soviet inspiration. The iron grip of the 5-year plans stunted the natural evolution and innovation within the private sector, reducing it to a languid and ineffective shell. State-owned companies, rather than bastions of economic strength, morphed into dens of notoriously inept management, riddled with the malignant rot of corruption, with profitability remaining a distant mirage. When confronted with these stark truths, India's Prime Minister brushed them aside with a dismissive wave, famously deriding profit as a dirty word that held no importance. Thus, in the shadowy aftermath of its independence, India found itself ensnared in the throes of underdevelopment and poverty. Although the nation's economy charted an upward trajectory, the pace was a sluggish 2-3% growth, lagging behind other Asian nations that embraced more capitalistic models and reveled in the double-digit growth they delivered. A seminal turn in India's narrative was yet to come in 1991, a year that etched itself into the annals of history with an event so profound that even historians grapple to encapsulate its magnitude. It was the year when Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as the president of a Soviet Union which had already faded into oblivion. This domino effect continued in 1981 when the Soviet Union, India's staunchest trading ally, imploded, dragging its economy into the dark abyss along with it. The shockwaves from this cataclysmic event, coupled with a host of pre-existing challenges, plunged India into a whirlpool of economic crisis. Edging perilously close to the brink of bankruptcy, India found itself unable to repay its mounting loans. To stave off this impending financial disaster, India was compelled to accept a colossal loan from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. However, this lifeline came with a hefty condition, a seismic shift in India's economic ethos. India had to abandon its centrally planned model, shake off the shackles of excessive regulation, and fling open its doors to global competition. The nation responded in kind. As the barriers crumbled, foreign corporations, hitherto barred from the Indian market, surged in like a tidal wave, eager to tap into the country's abundant supply of cheap labor and a plethora of engineers. India transformed into the world's workshop, with factories, IT departments, and call centers mushrooming across its landscape. The world, entranced by India's allure, began to outsource an array of services to its shores. This opened the floodgates for an array of homegrown Indian companies, particularly in the IT sector, who thrived in meeting this surging demand. Coupled with a sprawling domestic market and a burgeoning population, these factors kindled an economic boom that gathered momentum with each passing year, accelerating India's rise to an economic powerhouse. However, beneath the lustrous veneer of economic growth lies a convoluted paradox. Despite the impressive figures inked onto the pages of economic reports, the lived realities of countless citizens appear to be trapped in a starkly contrasting narrative. This isn't a mere conjecture, but an unsettling revelation drawn from a myriad of surveys and data points. Gallup opinion polls sketch a disheartening picture. Even as the Indian economy flexed its muscles over the past 2 decades, the satisfaction of its citizens with their personal economic conditions and quality of life dwindled year after year. A mere 3% of Indians perceive themselves as thriving, placing India disconcertingly low on the Global Satisfaction Index. To add a further layer of distress, overall life satisfaction in India is so dismal that the nation finds itself among the top 10 unhappiest countries, ranking lower than nations embroiled in conflicts and economic strife such as Iraq, Libya, Ethiopia, and Pakistan. In this grand narrative of economic triumph, it is an eerie paradox that over 90% of Indians perceive their personal circumstances to be on a continual downhill slope. What could possibly fuel this contradictory reality? Digging deeper into survey and opinion poll data, 2 main culprits emerge. The first, somewhat unexpectedly, is unemployment. For years, India's unemployment rate hovered around 5 to 6%. While this figure is slightly higher than that of the US or the UK, it aligns closely with Canada and is considerably lower than several European countries. However, a closer inspection of these statistics unveils a far bleaker reality. Nearly 90% of all jobs in India fall within the informal sector, a vast domain that sweeps in everything from farm and construction workers to cleaners, taxi drivers, and shopkeepers. These roles, bereft of regular contracts, exist in a precarious realm devoid of permanence. The inhabitants of this sector find themselves grappling with low wages, stunted career growth, and a glaring absence of job security. The bitter truth is that while these individuals are technically employed, their jobs fall woefully short of offering them a sustainable livelihood. Bereft of security or future prospects, they eke out a day-to-day existence, teetering on the brink of poverty and marred by unhappiness. The narrative is no less grim for those armed with college degrees who find themselves vying for better paid and more stable jobs. The specter of unemployment is ironically more pervasive among the educated population. A staggering 20% of college graduates remain jobless, a figure that outstrips the unemployment rate among the less educated populace. This is a perplexing paradox, given that the majority of young Indians are ardent pursuers of STEM subjects, particularly engineering and computer science, disciplines that should be in high demand. Instead, the nation is besieged by a disillusioned army of unemployed engineers, their dreams and ambitions echoing in the hollow void of unfulfilled potential. The question, then, that seems to hang in the air like a specter is, how can this be? How has the promise of higher education, especially in the technical realm, evaporated in the crucible of modern-day India? In the 1990s, the panorama of higher education was vastly different. A scarce number of institutions of repute existed, nurturing an elite group of engineers who, upon graduation, were assured of enviable job prospects. However, as the winds of liberalization swept through India, a surge of private colleges emerged, eagerly bestowing degrees on an unprecedented scale. The allure of engineering, tethered as it was to the promise of a prosperous future, was irresistible. Private institutions leveraged this hunger for success, flooding the market with millions of engineers whose training often lacked the rigor and depth that their professions demanded. As supply overshadowed demand, the once cherished engineering degree, and by extension the value of a college degree, started to wane. The heart of the issue is this: India is trapped in a vicious cycle of jobless growth. The country's economic expansion is powered by increased efficiency and productivity in businesses, not by substantial business expansion that would necessitate a larger workforce. Consequently, new job creation is woefully inadequate. With a population growth that adds millions of potential workers each year, the competition for the scarce available jobs reaches a frenzied pitch. The desperate scramble for employment occasionally throws up surreal scenarios. Take, for instance, the incident in 2022 when the Indian Railways announced a whopping 35,000 job openings. However, this large figure was dwarfed by the staggering 12 million applications they received. Similarly, in 2019, a staggering 100,000 hopefuls vied for a mere 62 positions of telephone messengers in Uttar Pradesh. Among the applicants were 3,700 PhD holders, a testament to the desperate times. Looming over this disconcerting employment scenario is another malevolent specter: growing inequality. The World Inequality Report places India amongst the countries grappling with the highest disparities in income and wealth. More alarmingly, the pace of growth of this inequality outstrips that of any other nation. This lopsided distribution of the fruits of economic progress is not merely an ethical or moral conundrum. High inequality poses a tangible threat to the growth and development of a nation. It suffocates economic growth, fractures social cohesion, and seeds discord and resentment within societies. In the context of India, the picture is ominously clear. If economic growth fails to translate into improvements in the lived realities of the majority, if the benefits of growth are hoarded by a small segment of the population rather than trickling down to uplift the masses, then the significance of that growth is severely diminished. Regrettably, this appears to be precisely what is transpiring in India. The narrative of growth rings hollow against the cacophony of ground realities.